Today I want to talk about self-care, but I don't want to talk about self-care in kind of a specific way as to what you can eat and sleep and the practices that you can do to take care of yourself. I want to look at it more from the perspective of self-care as an attunement, being attuned to ourselves, to the rhythms and cycles that we move through throughout the month, especially if you're a woman, throughout the year and throughout our lives, and really looking at life and our experience of being human as a cyclical experience versus a linear experience that we often are kind of trained to see life through the lens of that trajectory based on how our society functions. So I want to talk about self-care as a way of tuning in to yourself and to nature around us. This is Corinne Bloom, and you're listening to Raw Conversations. So the reason why I want to talk about this topic now is we're already in the second week of December. That's crazy. Time is flying. But December is a time where I really see it. I really witness kind of this disconnect that we have from the natural rhythms of nature, basically. So in our kind of capitalist society, December is one of the busiest times, right? It's the time to do all your Christmas shopping and to do all of your Christmas drinks and, loads of sugar and alcohol and social events and traveling and sometimes a lot of stress because of what family brings up for people. It's kind of one of the busiest months of the year, which is really ironic because if we were to follow the rhythms of nature, it's the darkest time of the year, which means it's the time of year that we need to rest and sleep the most. It's an invitation also, if you think about how light is the external and dark is the internal, because we're in a time of darkness, it's an invitation to go inside. And it's actually a really potent time for that. It's a really potent time for meditation, for internal reflection, for just being. And our society is doing the exact opposite. Like we are doing so much at this time of year. And, I don't want to take away from like the festivity, right? That it can be, people can also love this time of year because of the festive nature of it. I'm not like putting that down. However, I have witnessed for years upon years the stress that people experience in this time of year. And that's like, well, that's not very festive. That's not very celebratory. And if you look at kind of ancient cultures, they always had ritual at this time of year, right? Especially the solstice was always a time of ritual in connection to nature. Always in connection to nature. And I think this is another thing is we're kind of so far removed from nature that we don't really have ritual anymore. We have maybe tradition is a better word for it, which again, there's nothing wrong with it, but is it connected to nature? Are we attuned to the energy of this time? Because again, if we're pushing and we're doing so much and we're loading ourselves with sugar and alcohol and not really taking any time for ourselves, is that healthy for us? Like, does that benefit us? So when it comes to self-care, and self-care, again, I will always look at it as a holistic thing. Self-care is a part of loving ourselves. It is a very important part of getting to know ourselves. So when people look at being in relationship or just being in relationship with themselves, they're like, oh God, why do I behave this way? Why do I get triggered in this way? I want to change these patterns. I don't like this about myself. It's not just about going in and doing the, emotional and psychological work, if you will. A huge part of it is, how do I take care of myself? Because taking care of myself is essentially listening in and tuning into myself. and asking myself, what do I need? And that is an act of love. That is an act of generosity. That is an act of presence, loving attention, which if you've followed my work, I talk about that all the time. These are really like the fundamental pillars of being a human being and being a healthy human being on all levels from a holistic perspective. So taking care of ourselves, whether that's physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, it doesn't matter. It's the whole thing, right? It's really vitally important. And I often feel saddened. I feel saddened, especially now, kind of where in this very interesting point in history where in many ways we're getting really pulled away from ourselves and really pulled away from nature. And I don't really want to go into the conversation of technology, but I'll touch upon it very briefly. You know, technology can be... it can be very powerful and it can be very useful if it has the right intention behind it. It can be a huge distraction. It can be terribly detrimental, and it can actually be incredibly manipulative and controlling if the intention is not good behind it. And this is the thing I say a lot to clients, that it's not always about the action, it's the motivation or the intention behind that action. So, you know, you could do a favor for a friend out of just an act of generosity and love, you know, be like, you're my friend, I want to do this for you because I care about you. Or you can do a favor for a friend and go, oh, well, if I do this for you, then you owe me one. You have to do something for me. I have, you know, I've got points that are accruing and you will owe me something back, right? That's manipulative. That's giving to get. So it's not the action, it's the intention and the motivation behind that action. So, you know, with technology, some people go, oh, well, it's amazing. There's all these amazing things you can do with it. But again, what's the motivation behind it? And also to what degree? I tend to be a kind of person that likes to look at, well, what's the middle way, right? And what's the cost if we tilt too far off balance? And health, well-being is all about balance. When our body, our mind, our emotional being is in a state of equilibrium, we're healthy. The moment we have dis-ease is because something is off balance. So I think we are in an interesting moment in time where we can kind of either choose the path of heart, of nature, of that which is alive, or we can choose the path of the machine, basically, which can create all of these amazing things. But does it have soul? Does it have heart? Does it have the kind of magic of being human? And why we're here to be human is because we have feelings and a heart that beats and sensations and, you know, all of these beautiful qualities that like a machine could never replicate, can never ever replicate. And technology could never replicate that. The soul of a person, the heart of a person is so beautifully unique that it can't even be replicated from one human to another, right? You know, even if they were to clone you, it wouldn't be you, because the spirit that is in you is unique. So I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent, but the reason why I'm touching upon that is because we're really at a point in time where we have to be very mindful of, we're either going to become so disconnected from nature that our fingers are slipping from it, right? We won't be able to touch it anymore. And actually how vitally important it is, because we're under this illusion. We've been lied to, essentially. Like if you read the dictionary, I remember Zach Bush talking about this. If you read the definition in the dictionary about nature, for nature, it says everything that is not man and man created. And he's like, well, there's the problem. We see ourselves as separate from nature. And the moment that you're separate from something, that separate entity could become your enemy, right? Which we're seeing a lot in our world. Nature's bad, it's dangerous. When actually nature is so rejuvenating. Yes, the earth is wild, right? It's something to be really respected. You can have a trickling brook, or you can have a raging flood, right? You can have a gentle, warm summer's breeze, or you can have a hurricane. It's profound. Nature is profound. It's powerful, and it deserves respect, and it deserves taking care of, right? And being attuned with. So this goes back to the attunement. And the thing is I think what Zach Bush was referring to is like, so now we've created this kind of enemy because it's separatism, but we are nature. We are nature. There's a reason why they say, go and look at a body of water for 20 minutes and it will soothe your anxiety. It will lower the levels of your anxiety. It will boost your dopamine. It will change your hormones. Like, it will make you feel good. Same thing with the sun. Same thing like forest bathing. That's a thing, right? Go spend an hour in the forest and you will come out feeling completely different. Nature soothes us, heals us, because it is part of our inner nature. We're connected to it. I'm loving my relationship with my plants, my house plants right now. I've always, since I was like, I don't know, 20, I name my plants and I talk to them. And there was a period of time where I stopped doing that. And my plants, I noticed my plants weren't doing so well. And then all of a sudden I was like, right, I'm not giving them attention. I'm not talking to them. And now every morning, my daughter and I, we've named all the plants. We say good morning to them. You know, I always say how beautiful they are and thank you for the beauty that they bring to my home. And I cannot tell you how every single time, I remember this even from my 20s, my plants in my apartment when I was young, they grow. They just instantly start to grow and flourish and become lush and gorgeous. They are consciousness. There's a film on consciousness. I think it's called I think it's called Aware Glimpses of Consciousness. And there's a section in it about the scientist that works with plants, proving that plants have consciousness. And you could say everything that is of nature has consciousness because it is consciousness. We are all consciousness. That's what life is, right? Anything that's living is consciousness in a different form. And so plants have that too. And it's so remarkable when you can actually physically see it. You can physically see the difference. So again, why am I sharing this? Because I'm having a relationship to nature in my own home and seeing the profound effects that it has on me. It makes me happy. I can see that the plants are happy. We're having this relationship. And in a time where we are so hooked and addicted to our phones, and now with this new app and everyone, I'm not even going to go into that because I don't want to sound judgmental, but I'm slightly exasperated by it because, again, we're getting pulled into this artificial world. You know, what is the cost of that? Are we, what happens to taking care of ourselves, knowing that we are nature and we need nature? We don't need screens all day long, right? Like if any one of you looks at your screen time, that they send you the update at the end of the day or whatever, I don't know if it's at the end of the day or the week, it's kind of quite shocking, right? It's really quite shocking. And I think like, well, what did we do before? I think about what I did as a child. I would go out and play outside all the time. I love the forest. I love going down to the river. I loved even when we lived in this house that had this little tiny backyard, not even a backyard. It was like a fence with like like a narrow corridor. But the owners of the house had made this beautiful kind of Japanesey pond garden. And I used to just go like huddle in a ball and sit under this beautiful fern and look into the pond, and I think there were little goldfish in it, and it was just so magical for me. It was so magical. And how many kids do that these days? How many adults still, I know actually adults that are scared of nature. They're afraid of grass. And I don't say that in a judgmental way at all, but I'm saying it to reveal, to exemplify, like, how far away are we, not just from nature. This is a thing, we've defined it as something separate. How far away are we from our inner nature, from who we actually are? And then you wonder why people are depressed and anxious and really, led by fear a lot of the time, because we're not at home within ourselves. So taking care of ourselves and being attuned with ourselves and with the rhythms of nature, again, I'm going to say, is an act of self-care. It's an act of self-love. It's an act of actually getting to know ourselves more deeply, because that care signifies the consistency of presence, which means you mean something to me. That's what we're telling ourselves. You mean something to me. You matter. You're important. I love you, which means you're lovable. All of these things that we show and tell ourselves, and that we, just by the simple act of, like, I'm going to pay attention to you. I'm going to be attuned to you. What do you need right now? Do you need to go out on a bender because it's Christmas? Or do you need to actually just be at home and light a candle and have a cup of tea and meditate, or read a book, or listen to a podcast, or just be in silence and be with yourself, or sing with your friends, with a small group of friends, or what, I don't know. It doesn't, and it might be like, yeah, actually I want to go out and I want to be with lots of people and I want to be, celebratory, but doing things with the intention of, what do I need right now? Not, I have to do this, I should do this. How many times do you tell yourself that in a day? The should and the have to isn't really a choice. It's a duty. And part of really getting into the practice of self-care is, do I want to do this? Does this feel good for me? Is it beneficial for me to do this? Right? So I'm not trying to be like the moral police by any means. That's not the point of this. The invitation here is, are you paying attention to yourself? Are you listening? Are you listening to what your body's trying to tell you? Are you paying attention to what nature is doing? Understanding that you are nature. And is there something to learn? Is there something to learn by watching how nature cycles? How it moves from each season, and how it moves within a day. And yeah, it's just, all of this is about bringing awareness into our lives. Self-awareness, awareness of others, awareness of our environment, awareness of how things are interconnected, awareness of ripple effects. How I love quantum entanglement, how by making a sound, you affect a star. It's like God knows how many light years away. Everything is interconnected. There is no separation. That's the greatest illusion, right? So this is getting a little bit philosophical and, existential and all of this stuff, but really, to draw it back in and to concentrate it in kind of seed form and hold it within yourself. How do you take care of yourself? And you begin by just simply listening. Listen to yourself. Your body is really wise. We can try to, what's the word? Oh, there's a word for it. We can kind of override. That's it. We can override what our body is saying. Oh, I'm tired. I want to sleep. Nope, we're going to go out. We can override it, but the body will never lie. It will never lie. So, again, there isn't a right or a wrong or a good or a bad, but the invitation again is, how can you tune into yourself? How can you listen? Can you trust? Can you feel into your intuition, the voice of the language of your body, of your emotions, and just start to pay attention? And this is you building a relationship with yourself. And so then all the other topics that I talk about, whether it's fear or anxiety or limiting beliefs or self-worth, or it's all interconnected, because this is how you do the work, is you build a relationship with yourself. That is the point of the work, is you build a really healthy, loving, kind, committed relationship with yourself. So there's the invitation. As always, take it or leave it as feels right for you. What resonates, build upon it. What doesn't resonate, you can just let it go. And I'm just wishing you not just a festive and lovely holiday season, but if it needs to be restful or whatever it is that you need, I hope that it is that for you. Okay, thanks for listening in. Loving you from afar. You've been listening to Raw Conversations with Corinne Bloom. Thanks so much for showing up, listening in, and being a part of the conversation with me.